Imagine you're in a room with a man in a lab coat. You've been told this is a study about learning and memory. Your task: deliver electrical shocks to a stranger in the next room every time they get an answer wrong. You hear screams, begging, but the man in the lab coat tells you to continue. Would you obey? Chances are you'd like to think you wouldn't. But in 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram proved that the majority of people would. Milgram's experiment was designed to test how far people would go in obeying authority, even when it meant harming other human beings. Participants were told they'd been randomly assigned to either the role of a teacher or a learner. But here's the twist. Everyone who volunteered was always the teacher. The so-called learner was actually an actor sitting in another room pretending to receive shocks. The teacher was then taken to a separate room where they sat in front of an imposing machine labeled shock generator. The scientist dressed in a crisp lab coat reassured them that while the shocks might be painful, they would cause no permanent damage. Of course, this was a lie. The learner wasn't actually being shocked at all, but the teacher didn't know that. The scientist instructed the teacher to administer shocks each time the learner answered a question incorrectly. At first, the experiment seemed harmless. The teacher asked simple memory questions. Pair the word blue with one of the following: sky, chair, spoon, or bread. If the learner answered correctly, no shock was given. But if they answered wrong, the teacher had to administer a shock, each time increasing the voltage. 15 volts, 30 volts, 45 volts. At 75 volts, the learner grunted in discomfort. At 120 volts, he yelled. At 150 volts, he begged to be let out. Yet, when participants hesitated, the experimenter calmly insisted, "Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue." And here's where it gets terrifying. 65% of participants obeyed orders all the way to 450 volts. Milgram's study shattered the comforting illusion that only evil people are capable of atrocities. Instead, it suggested that ordinary people, good, kind, everyday people could commit horrific acts under the right circumstances. The results weren't about sadism. Most participants were deeply uncomfortable, some even crying, but they continued anyway, because a perceived authority figure told them to. The Milgram experiment isn't just some relic of psychological history. It's a mirror to the world we live in today. Think about corporate environments where employees follow unethical practices just because a higher-up instructed them to. Think about police brutality where officers claim they were just doing their job. Think about social media outrage, where people blindly attack others because an influencer or authority figure tells them to. Would you have stood up to the experimenter, or would you have followed orders, just like 65% of the people did?